Good afternoon. I'm John Matea, the president of the Goldwater Foundation. Welcome to this afternoon's open house. This afternoon's open house is going to focus on the letters that are written on behalf of the students for their Goldwater nominations. The letters are very important, so this is an important topic. And we have Bert Holmes and Carrie Caruxis, two reviewers for Goldwater, who are going to be talking about the letters. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bert and Carrie. And I'd also like to thank Babs Wise, who will be monitoring the chat. And so if you have questions, Babs will bring them to the attention of Carrie and Bert. Carrie and Bert, do you want to comment on whether or not you'd like to wait to the end or have the questions asked as we go through the presentation?
I think we take questions anytime when they're on a person's mind to raise it, and we'll see what we can do about answering it. You agree, Carrie?
Absolutely.
So as you can see, I'm Bert Holmes. I'm on the East Coast in North Carolina. I've been retired for several years. I was a reviewer for more than a decade. Still am a reviewer. And I probably nominated 10 or 15 students for the Goldwater. And during my career, I've been at 3 different liberal arts institutions, and I've directed about 80 undergraduates in undergraduate research. Carrie?
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Caruxis. I'm a physical chemist. I've recently retired after almost 40 years at Harvey Mudd College, which is one of the Claremont colleges in Southern California. And like Bert, been very active in undergraduate research, both on my own campus and nationally. And we're looking forward to your questions today as we go through this presentation.
Next slide, please, Shelby. Shelby, next slide.
Oh, it didn't change for you? Okay, 1 second.
It did. It just took a few seconds.
Okay.
So here's a quick overview of our agenda. We're going to talk about who should write letters, and then some criteria to consider, and then some idea about what the letter should address. We'll have some advice from Goldwater reviewers that may help you as you shape your letter. And then Carrie's going to talk about ideas on how to translate classroom talents into potential research skills, especially for faculty who have not mentored the student in research but had them in class. How do you convince us that this is going to be a good researcher? And then we'll talk about advice from research mentors, and then a summary, and then a little reminder about the letter formatting and requirements. And we'll take questions at the end, but as we said, we'll take them at any time during this presentation. Next, so who should write letters? Well, obviously the research mentor should. And that's probably, of the 3 letters we read, that's probably the most important one. But it's also possible for STEM faculty who had the student in class to talk about the research skills. And in particular, Carrie will tell you about how to make that transition. We sometimes get questions about, can non-STEM faculty write letters? And I can recall maybe of one letter in all the ones I've read that was from a non-STEM faculty, and it wasn't particularly supportive. So I would generally say no, but if that's the best 3rd letter you can get, then go ahead. I also thought that adjuncts probably shouldn't write letters, and then I had my mind changed several years ago when I had an adjunct who was writing a letter, and the adjunct actually had a PhD in organic chemistry, had formed a company, ran the company for 20 or 30 years, had lots of research scientists worked for him as he ran the company. He sold the company, and he did what he always wanted to do. He became a college faculty member, and he was running an organic chemistry lab and teaching organic lecture. And his organic lab was set up so there would be 2 or 3 or 4 long research projects in the organic chemistry lab. And when he wrote that letter, he compared that student to folks that he had in his research team for his company. And it was one of the best letters I've ever read. So initially I would have said probably not adjunct faculty, but then I ran across one that was exceptional. Carrie, do you have an example?
Not of the adjunct faculty, no.
Well, why don't you take the next one?
Okay, so we often get the question of whether a graduate student or a postdoc can write a letter, and we understand that in many cases it's graduate students and postdocs who most closely supervise students and probably could write a more detailed letter than the research mentor. Now, for a postdoc, since they've completed their doctorate and are more experienced in research and in writing and publishing, they're perfectly acceptable for writing a letter. For graduate students, they're still in the training phase. So our recommendation is that the graduate student, have the faculty research mentor co-sign the letter, or even the two individuals work together to write a single letter. And the last point, Bert and I want to share 2 quick stories about coaches writing letters. I had a very effective letter from a coach a number of years ago describing a student who was a Division I varsity athlete and knew the student's commitment to research and knew that the student was struggling about the time commitments that he was making with the team for practices and travel, and knew that time was taking away from research. And ultimately, that student decided to quit the team and focus on the research and had tremendous outcomes, which the research mentor could confirm in his or her letter. So that was a very effective letter from a coach. Bert?
And I actually had one of my research students, he was a sophomore, got a letter from a coach. And I was skeptical of that initially, but this coach this student was actually a cross-country runner and a track team member of a Division I program at UNC Asheville. And this coach talked about the student's leadership ability. He'd been selected to be team captain as a sophomore, which was, I guess, unheard of. And also when they went to away meets on a bus or on a van, the student would bring his research papers, research journals, would read them, would talk to other team members about the research he was doing, and he showed great enthusiasm for that work. And that was also a very effective letter as far as I was concerned. Any questions so far?
I have a question. This is Amy Kierstead from the University of New England. I don't see it on your list here, and I'm not sure if there will be another list, but what about a professional staff member at the institution who might be overseeing a special project that's peripheral to the research or is using many of the skills that one would apply in a research project? And then along the same lines, like an internship site supervisor, where those same skills are overseen, but it's not a faculty member per se.
Well, the latter could be, in effect, like a research mentor letter. Am I understanding the question correctly?
Yes, except it's not research, it's an internship. Like it's a job, for example, but it's or it's a project or something, but it's not undergraduate research the way that we would typically describe it. So what if it's not somebody who's on this list, but could still speak to those same skills?
I think that would be acceptable. We sometimes see that in cases for engineering students,
Okay.
because they often do internships for a company in the summer or during the academic year. And so, yes, that would certainly be acceptable.
Okay.
A member of the staff who's not a faculty member, I would recommend you try to find someone else, but if you can't, then use that one.
Okay.
And I would say that when we later talk about some of the advice that we'd give course instructors and how to draft their letters, maybe those individuals should follow that same kind of advice. We'll talk
Sure.
about that.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything else? If not, next slide, Shelby. So the Goldwater Scholarship Letter should mainly address the Goldwater mission, which is to identify the nation's next generation of STEM research leaders. And these research projects can be any of the following. It can be summer research funded by NSF proposals from RUI or REU, or projects funded by the institution, or projects funded by a private source. So it could be any of that. But it could also be academic term experiences in research labs. We see a lot of that in many cases. And we're seeing more and more science laboratories in particular become class-based research projects where they'll form a little research team and they'll work for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks on a research project. That certainly can demonstrate the student's research ability. But even a student with no research experience can still write a research proposal as their research essay. But I would advise all of you to review the personal and the research essay from the student before writing your letter, because one of the worst things a reviewer can encounter is the student says, I want to do X. And one of the reference writers says the student will never be any good at X. So you want to make sure there's an overlap of good ideas in the student's personal essay or the research essay, and then what the research advisor or the letter writer says.
Sorry, I'm listening to a meeting. Okay.
Was there a question there? I heard some murmuring. Okay, next slide, please.
Bert, can we go back just a second?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's sort of a question in the chat about the answer to non-STEM professional research letters is it depends. And I think that is correct. And then someone follows that up by saying, I would say the same applies to a professional staff member. Many professional staff are high-ranking with terminal degrees and their own research experience, just not faculty.
Yeah, I've seen more and more R1 institutions have non-faculty yet professional staff who have advanced degrees and have vast experiences. So I think that certainly is acceptable. I must tell you, my bias is because I've only taught at liberal arts colleges. We almost never have that. But that doesn't mean it's not right.
Let me add something quickly. I think in this situation, the letter writer should use a little of the real estate to describe their background and explain why they can give an evaluation of the particular student based on their own personal experience obtaining a PhD and the kinds of work that they've done over the years.
Anything else?
That should do it for right now. There's some other things, but I think you're going to get to those, so we'll be
Thanks,
good.
Babs. Yeah, so what this slide presents is what I learned in, I don't know, 4th or 5th grade about the research process. You generate a research question. You design experiments or computations that are going to resolve that question. You carry out the work, you analyze outcomes, revise experiments or computations if the results suggest that, and then conduct additional investigations. Then you interpret the results and communicate those outcomes to the STEM community. And what we see are stronger applicants have participated in most of those steps. And then weaker applicants may just do one thing over and over and over again, like doing one experiment and synthesizing one compound multiple times. Like I said, I've had about 80 students do research with me, and I've maybe have had 4 or maybe 10% generate a research question. And it's almost always after they've completed their research project, and they'll come to me and say, hey, what if we did this next? And I remember in some cases I would say, well, we've already tried that, it didn't work. Or I'll say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and I've actually put it in my next NSF proposal. And every now and again, I would say, holy crap, why didn't I think of that? And if you ever have that experience with a student, make certain you emphasize that because that shows that they're really learning to think like a scientist. Okay, next slide then. So your recommendation letter should address the criteria that relates to the ability and desire of the student to pursue advanced degrees in science and engineering. Talk about potential for a career in the STEM field that's eligible for Goldwater, and then demonstrate outstanding academic and research performance, good maturity, some initiative, motivation, etc. Next slide, please. So the next one is some criteria to consider. So the first one is tell us how well you know the candidate. Have you interacted with them in the research environment? Have you taught them in a class? Tell us about your experience with the student. And then tell about specific contributions the applicant made to the project. If you're the research mentor, or if you're a classroom instructor that had these multiple week-long projects where the student showed some particular skills that are suitable to be a STEM researcher. What skills did the applicant acquire or did they bring to the project? And tell us about the candidate's communication skills. How well can they communicate results that they've acquired to fellows or to fellows in the class or to the STEM community at large? And then how would you rate the candidates at analytical ability, the thinking, the reasoning, analytical skills? And then did they ever deal with research adversity where they encountered a problem that didn't work in the lab? They went back to the literature, they reviewed the literature, they got some ideas, they came back to the lab and implemented those new ideas. Next slide is a continuation. So how does the candidate compare to other students you've had that have earned a PhD? Or better yet, if you've had prior students who've earned a Goldwater, tell us how this student compares to those prior Goldwater winners. If not Goldwater, then maybe NSF Graduate Research Fellow winners. Tell us about the candidate's career goals, their aspirations, and why they want to do that. And then perhaps you could provide information about the candidate's potential that we wouldn't see in the transcript, CV, resume, or personal statement. So anything new that you think should be added, please talk about that. Okay, Carrie, next slide, please.
Okay, this slide is a summary. Everything on the right under the what to do as a letter writer is what Bert has just communicated. But let me remind you, do go to the Goldwater website and read the section for recommenders. There's guidance in general, and there's guidance for research mentors, and there's guidance for course instructors as well. So all the points in that list Bert just mentioned. On the don't side, we advise not simply recapping the student's transcript, but what would be helpful is if you are familiar with the field that the student wants to pursue for his or her career, look at the courses that the student has taken. Have they provided a strong foundation for moving in that direction? Clearly, they're going to be taking graduate level courses as well, but that would be helpful to the reviewer. Also, don't simply summarize the student's resume. However, the space that they're provided to list their awards and activities is short. And if you can amplify and elaborate on any of those experiences, that would be terrific. Put that in the letter. And we just simply say not to make references to the student's demeanor. We certainly hope that all of Goldwater scholars are pleasant students and have positive attitudes, but that's not something we need to read in a letter. Next slide, please. Okay, so we had said a few slides back that we want to talk about aspects to put in your letter if you're a course instructor, or perhaps you've not mentored the student in a typical research capacity, but have interacted with the student on some other kind of project. And on the left-hand side are the typical attributes that we often see in letters. And yes, the reviewers can translate those attributes to what we really want to understand is how does the student think like a scientist, what skills might the student have that they could use in their research career. But I'm just giving you some idea of how to talk about those classroom skills in the letter in terms of a research setting. So just to give some examples, we've always had students, for example, who answer a homework or an exam question in a very unique way, very thoughtful way. And that to me is evidence that this is a student who's going to likely develop very novel approaches to the research questions that they ask. Maybe you have a student who comes into the classroom and tells you about the connections between the material that you're talking about with material from another discipline. And a student who can connect across disciplines is going to be able to have a broader perspective and do some more innovative research in the future. Bert talked about wanting to know whether the student was a strong communicator, and that's important for articulating research questions, sharing findings with those in the field and outside the field, explaining one's methodologies, etc. We're always looking for examples of leadership. Remember, we want Goldwater scholars to be students who are going to be future leaders in their research field. So if you can talk about anything in the classroom where the student served as a leader, that would be great. And again, we don't want everyone to always be serving as a leader. We want them to be able to work effectively with others. So give us examples of that. So this is just a little chart to help you begin to think about the characteristics and attributes of your students and translate them into how this would demonstrate that the student thinks like a scientist and will be a future leader in a research field. Next slide, please. Okay, so for those research mentors writing letters, I mentioned that there's advice on the Goldwater website specific for research mentors. Remember that the students are being reviewed by someone in their discipline, but not necessarily in their particular research area of interest, not necessarily their interested subdiscipline. So it would help if you would briefly describe your research and so that the reviewer has an understanding of the general direction of your research projects, not writing a huge description, but enough to give the reviewer a sense of the research that goes on in your laboratory. What we're really looking for is how the student has been engaged in the work and taken ownership of his or her project, how the student has advanced the project. So we really want to hear about specific contributions that the student has made. You might need to ask them, because maybe they did the research for you a year or two ago, to give you a short list of what they can remember of the specific contributions that they made to the project to help you craft your letter. Again, we're looking for ownership of the project and the independence exhibited by the students. So that's really important. Any examples, specific examples that you can give us of originality, insights, creativity, perseverance? That's terrific. Let me also point out if the student has mentioned that they're working on a draft of a publication, or you actually have a published work with the student, please confirm that the student that you are working on that draft of a manuscript, or tell us a little more in detail how the student has contributed to that research in the published work. And again, if you can, it's really important for you to help the student with the research essay and really encourage them to have multiple revisions. We encourage the students to use the word I. We want to know what they did to move the research forward. So help them understand that that's an important aspect of their research essay.
Can I jump in here, Carrie, just for a
Sure.
minute? One of the questions in the chat is, when it comes to students who have done only course-based research, CUR, should the faculty member be considered a research mentor or a classroom instructor? Because when all experiments at that point for just a semester are done as a group, how can they discern individual contributions?
I would have considered the letter writer as a research mentor. You may have to go back to the student who's asked you to write a letter and ask them to provide some specific examples of what they contributed to the project. I understand with group work, it might be hard to observe as the instructor, but this is where the student needs to step up and tell you what they contributed to the project.
Can
That
I
would be
jump
my-
in here for a second?
Yeah,
We actually encourage all students to provide letter writers with little packets of information that the letter writer can use or choose not to use. But the more detailed a letter is, the stronger the letter is in support of the student. As a previous letter writer, I didn't remember dates when a student started or stopped working with me, what their specific contributions might have been a year and a half, prior to me writing the letter. And so I always found that kind of detailed information very useful and included in my own letters to students. So if a student isn't providing you with this kind of information, ask for it. And again, use it as you will. You don't have to use it, but it should be available to you. And I'd like to also say that on Carrie's comment about the research essay, we do encourage students to use the word I as opposed to using we or our team, because the reviewers really are trying to figure out what the student's contribution was to the actual work. The research essay is not a typical abstract. You would never use I in an abstract, but we time and again tell the student to use it in their research essays because it's different than an abstract.
any other questions, Babs?
As a follow-up, will CUR-based research work be given the same weight as an independent research project?
Yes, I can just say yes. Where the student has to provide the research that has been available, research opportunity that has been available to them. And if that's the experience, that's what the reviewer is going to apply all the other criteria to.
And I would say yes, as long as the research skills exhibited by those two different experiences are the same. Because as reviewers, we're reading 20 or 30 files and we get to pick 6 or 8 winners. And so if you've got student A that's done only course-based research and student B who's done a couple of summers, which one has exhibited the most ability to become a future STEM researcher? That's what we want to, and it doesn't really matter what your background experience is, whether it's occurs in a course or whether it's, several summers of research. We want to know the student's ability to be a future researcher, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to do in our comparison of one versus the other.
And I'll just say the quantity of research is immaterial.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. Bert?
Next slide, please. So this is just a summary. So what we've talked about is tell us the nature of your relationship with the student, how long you've known the student, and in what capacity. And then we want to know your assessment of the student's ability to think and function like a scientist. And what is the basis for your assessment? Have you been able to observe this directly? How does a student compare to others in this regard, other Goldwater winners or winners of NSF graduate research fellowships or other students who've gone on and earned PhDs? And give us specific examples that will support your assessment. And then we want to know about the student's career aspirations and how this aligns with the Goldwater mission. So help us understand that. Is the student on track to do that? Have they taken additional courses that would support their plan? And how will the Goldwater Scholarship benefit the student beyond just financially? That's all sort of things we'd like to know in a summary, or as we summarize what we're trying to evaluate during our review. Next slide, please. So this is just this information is on the Goldwater website. It just as a reminder, you can look up this if you want. You should make sure your letter of recommendation is given to the campus rep by the campus deadline. The deadline for Goldwater is the last February and January of 2026, but campus deadlines are often sooner. So make sure you don't miss the campus deadline. Next slide, please. And we're ready for questions. And we do want to acknowledge that Goldwater consultants are thanked for guidance and advice. And I particularly want to thank Carrie and Babs, who've been great. So questions?
Shelby, you want to take down the slides and let us just see everybody's face? I think that would be good.
Yes, if I can figure that out, I will do that momentarily.
Just stop share.
Yes, it's not giving me that option, so I will find it. Ah,
While
there it
we're
is.
working
It's
on
in.
that, Cassandra, I see you have your hand up.
Hi there. So I have a couple of questions actually. My main question is I have a student that I'm actually planning to be the nominator for rather than just writing a letter of recommendation. So question one is, would these guidelines that you've given be similar for the person nominating the candidate as for someone just writing one of the other letters of recommendation? And then my second question is, this student is basically just starting a research project with me. They conceived of the idea and they're helping to design the methodology and so on, but haven't actually done any of the hands-on work yet. And prior to this, my only supervision of them has been in a traditional lecture classroom scenario. Is that still could this still be a good candidate, or would it actually be better for them to wait, say, for next year's cycle and for me to nominate them once I actually have seen them working in the lab? What would you recommend?
So we said earlier that you can certainly have a student who's not done research, but is writing a research proposal and they're laying out what they're going to do. So the student should understand it well enough from you to be able to do that. And then it's your decision about whether this is one of your top applicants from your institution.
Okay.
But we certainly see ones where students are writing a proposal. They haven't done anything yet. This is what they're going to do, but they've got to convince us that they really understand what's involved and how they're going to be successful. And then your letter has to sort of communicate the same thing.
And in terms of the letter as the nominator rather than a letter of reference, is it the same sort of guidelines?
You're the campus representative for your school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have I'll hop on this one. You have a kind of a unique perspective. You are looking over the whole nomination process. And some of your comments may use that perspective that others wouldn't have. I don't think I would repeat what you said in your mentor letter. And so I would think about it from the larger perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm trying to understand, are you nominating the student to your campus and there are multiple students who a committee chooses, or I mean, I'm trying to, because there are some schools that only have 1 or 2 students being nominated. There are schools that have 20 or 30 being nominated. And then there's a campus committee that selects the top 4, 5, or 6.
Right. This is the only student from my campus.
Okay.
And are you talking about the part from the campus representative where you're supposed to write the comments about the student at the end? Is that what I think that might be the overlap here, because that's the part that will go forward.
That could be. So this is my first time ever doing this.
Right.
So if I sound ignorant, it's because I am. So I was under the impression that if I'm nominating the student, I'm writing a letter explaining why I'm nominating the student, and I'm assuming that it has a similar sort of feel to it as a letter of recommendation as to why the student is exceptional and so on. But it would be separate from the letters that the student is soliciting from their other professors and so on for the actual letters of recommendation. Or do I have that completely wrong?
You have it right, that there are 2 things. I was wondering, is there another professor that the student could get to write for them a letter of recommendation, and then your letter, so they actually get an extra sort of letter in there, one from you and then one from someone else, if there is such a possibility. I always think the more people that speak about a student, the better for the student, right? So that
they do have 3 other faculty members, one of whom did actually supervise their research for at least a year. So they are all independently writing letters of reference for the student. And then I am the campus rep, and I am supposed to be nominating the student.
Right. Yeah. So your letter is just the nomination letter, and you can mention all the ways you know the student there, but also why they stand out on your campus. Okay. Make sure that, you kind of take a broader view, not just looking at the student, but what is the campus milieu around research. So try and give that bigger picture if you can.
So you're the future research mentor, correct?
Yes.
And they've already done research with someone else. Is that also correct? Oh, so
Yes.
so absolutely. Yeah. And I would say nominate them this year. If you only got one, send them forward,
Okay.
I agree with
that experience will be good for everyone.
But let's clarify that you are completing a section of the application called the campus representative statement, not a separate letter.
Right.
It's not going to be uploaded as a letter of recommendation. It's part of the software.
I see. Okay. So it isn't really a letter of nomination. It's just
right.
Okay, I see. And then if I understand Babs's comment earlier, would it be advisable then for me, in addition, to write a letter as a research mentor for this new project that the student is starting, or because I think we were told I'm not allowed to do that. I can't nominate and also write a letter.
That's
Right.
not true. You can write a letter of recommendation and upload your narrative statement as the campus representative. The
However-
narrative statement as a campus representative is actually optional.
Yeah.
And so they are two separate things. So if you choose to write a letter of recommendation, you may do that and still put something into your campus representative narrative statement.
Cassandra, didn't you say that the student had 3 letters of recommendation already?
Well, they've approached 3 people to write the letters,
Okay.
yes. So presume,
Yeah.
and as far as I know, they've all agreed to do it.
Okay.
So-
You can only upload 3 total letters plus the campus representative spot. So if they have 3, then unless you're replacing one of those, you can't write a letter of recommendation, but you can write the other piece.
But
Okay.
but the piece you write about from the campus rep could be encouraging about the students' research ability and their the research that they're going to do with you. You could certainly talk about that.
If you have additional questions, email me.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate all that information.
Mhm. Anybody else? Questions?
While we're waiting for a question, I do want to make a comment because we have some folks who have not been to the open houses before. Goldwater views this application for this scholarship as kind of a training ground for students. This is probably the first national scholarship that many of these students will have applied for. So we're looking for you to help them in any way you can. You sit down and talk to them about their letter and the kinds of information you need. If you're a mentor for these students, then think about what we've talked about here today that we're looking for. So as you engage them in your research projects, that they contribute to multiple steps, that they contribute an intellectual contribution. One of the things that hasn't been talked about is whether we're looking for presentations or publications for these students. And what the reviewers are typically looking for are presentations. So, you know, is your experience providing the students with that opportunity? Publications are something that really are beyond the student's control. We see some students with publications, but what the reviewers are typically really looking for is that the students have given a presentation. It could be on campus. It could be a regional conference. It could be a national conference, but some culmination of work that they've done. Bert, Carrie, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I agree with everything you said, John. Sometimes campus reps or research mentors hold the student back from applying because they haven't had a publication, and we just do not have very many students with publications. That's not a criterion, but we do like to see that they've been able to carry out a research project with enough results and analysis that they can present the work either, as John said, on campus all the way up to a national conference, any one of those venues.
And I would say the same goes for publications. It can be a campus-based undergraduate research publication. It could be something a little broader, or, you know, it could be in a peer-reviewed journal. All those things are useful for the student to demonstrate.
John, may I step in? Sorry I'm late. This is Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hi. Sorry I'm late, everyone. I'm also one of the consultants. And maybe to follow up, in terms of what's written in the letter, and if the discussion's right, the discussion right now is about student publications. Again, the student's role in that is particularly important in the letter. And if there are letters that are planned, or if there are not letters, publications that are planned, that's also certainly a good thing to discuss in the letters because the students may have made significant contributions, but again, due to things outside the students' control, that won't be submitted until after the due date or after, even after they graduate. So yeah, this is a letter is a place where students their role can be put into context and where the reviewer can understand yeah understand that aspect of it.
One thing that makes for a strong application is in the students' research essay, as we've already said, we encourage the students to say, I did this or I contributed that idea to the project. And if it also appears in your letter, that makes for a very strong application that you support and comment on what contributions the student does make. So that integration of what the student contributes and what you're saying in your letter is quite important. It makes for a stronger overall application. Cassandra, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. Is this presentation, I see you're recording it, is it going to be made available? I'm asking for the sake of the other people who are actually writing letters of reference. I think this information would be very, very useful for them to help them write a strong letter for the candidate. So how can I get this other than just the link on the Goldwater website? Is this presentation going to be made available or anything like that?
Typically, we will post it to the website, to the Goldwater website, and
Okay.
anybody can watch it.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah.
also refer them to, there's extensive stuff on the website already about the letters of recommendation, and it can be very helpful for them to, have that on paper. Sometimes they don't want to watch a whole presentation. So,
Yeah.
Great,
We-
thank you.
We really do put it there for a reason.
Cassandra, I'd also say, there's a number of consultants that John has hired to work on this project, and you're welcome to have faculty reach out to John or to Paul or to Babs or to Carrie or me or other folks that are consultants, and we'll work with you trying to improve your possibility of success, especially because it sounds like your institution does not have a long track record of success with Goldwater. So we're very interested in those institutions.
Great, thank you. I will definitely take you up on that offer and let the other letter writers know that. Thank you.
And let me just point out, when you go to the opening page for the Goldwater website, look at the menu on the far left, go all the way to the bottom of that menu and look for 2026 open houses, and the recordings of all the presentations we've been giving since August are there. So
Great,
lots of different topics that we've covered.
will do. Thank you.
Today's open house was targeted to letter writers. This is typically we have these open houses for the campus representatives. We've had one for students this year. We're kind of new at the open house thing, and so we're experimenting. And if you have questions that you want addressed in the future, bring them to your campus representative and have him or her ask that question at the open houses, because they, as I say, these open houses are always open to the campus representatives. We've only done one for others, letter writers and students, on a couple of occasions.
And I would say if you think this was very useful, And your campus reps who have other faculty you think would benefit from this, they can certainly go to the Goldwater website and look at what happened today, or encourage your campus reps to tell John to do more of this. So, you know, John needs more things to do. So
we have a huge staff.
one or two. Or
Where is
three.
Shelby? Any additional questions? I doubt we've answered everybody's questions. And I should add, as Bert said, don't hesitate to contact us outside of these open houses. I see Bailey, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi folks. Good afternoon. Thanks so much. I am currently working with one of our students who I believe our committee is very likely to select for nomination. And he, interestingly, is doing a year-long co-op research internship right now. And so one of his letter writers is going to very obviously be the research, the PI at this private industry company. Are there things, my inclination has always been that those would come off fairly similarly, in terms of letters as PIs would here on campus. But are there anything that any of the consultants feel like is more or less important when letters are coming from research scientists and private industry?
What the reviewers are trying to figure out is what the potential is for the student to become a research scientist, engineer, or mathematician. And they're looking for letters from individuals who are professionals in the field. And so what I would again suggest, as I did a little earlier, that this individual use a little of the letter's real estate to talk about their own background so that the reviewers understand that they have a PhD in the field, have basically been through the process and will be evaluating the student on the basis of their own experience. And so it really doesn't matter whether the reviewer is coming from, the letter writer is coming from an academic background, a corporate background, a national laboratory. What the reviewers are really looking for is someone who can comment in an informed way on what it takes to become, a research scientist, engineer, mathematician, and are evaluating the student on that basis. Paul, I see your.
Yeah, and to echo what you said and continue on that a little bit, if they could say something about their mentoring experience, or how often do they work with students, or how many students have they worked with, and if they've worked with students, where do they typically go, and what sort of successes do they tend to have, those sorts of things.
And I would add that if you're the campus rep, I would encourage the letter writer to let you see the letter ahead of time and read it, critique it, offer suggestions. That would be very helpful too.
We encourage the letter writers to involve themselves in the letter writing process. I mean, all of you out there are interested in seeing your student receive a Goldwater scholarship. So feedback on your letter from a campus representative is something I would hope you would be looking for. It's certainly something that we encourage campus representatives to provide to letter writers if they see something that they believe would strengthen the letter writer's letter.
Thank you all for your comments. I appreciate it. I definitely will be working with them to edit their letter, but just was curious if there was anything special in the delineation with private industry there that I wasn't thinking of. So thank you all so much.
And we also should mention that Goldwater really doesn't care where the student ultimately does their research, at an academic lab, a corporate lab, a national lab. Again, don't be concerned that the student says, well, I want to go off and do research in a corporate lab. That's great by Goldwater standards. We're not looking for necessarily academic researchers. That is a misconception I've encountered before.